welcome to the ImAssuming podcast with Ija Mohan. And today I have uh, Ezra. I'm quite excited to talk to you, Ezra.
Hey, Ija, thanks for having me on. And I mean, we haven't seen each other in a while, at least in real life and stuff.
Yeah,
So,
I think we bumped into
yeah,
each other many years ago in one of those restaurants in
yeah,
Bangsa or Jangkat. I don't know.
yeah, sure.
That's many years ago. How you been?
I've been good. I have like the date on the corner of my screen, and it's like November 20th, I guess, or it's in the November range. And I mean, it's unreal that we're already at this stage for 2020. And yeah, and I mean, it's been quite the year, I'm
I
sure,
mean,
for everyone.
okay lah. 2020 has, as I suppose living and growing up in Malaysia. I assume you grew up in Malaysia as well. I don't know. Okay.
Yes, yes, I did.
And Wawasan Doplo Doplo or Vision 2020 has been drilled into all our heads, right? And this is not the 2020 anybody would have imagined it to be,
No,
right?
no, not at all. And I didn't even think that the guy who came out with what was on 2020, which was our
Yeah,
PM, was going to eventually be. I mean, that even that was like a cool experience, I
yeah.
think. But I mean, I think just and not just for anybody who had the
Mm,
Wawasan Duplo Duplo kind of idea, but it's just the whole. I think Wawasan 2020 in my head came around time when Back to the Future 2 was being
mm.
released, and you had like the you had like the cool jackets and the tied up Nikes and
The
you had the
hoverboards,
hoverboard
yeah.
and you had these flying cars. And so actually everything that was being asked of me as what my imagination would be like for 2020
Mm,
with what was in that film was like, okay, cool. I mean, the dates are
yeah, yeah, yeah.
a little bit off for the film geeks out there, but like, and I think what was really, really interesting was that when 2020 came this year, there was that initial excitement and sense of opportunity.
Mm.
And then March comes in, and it sets everybody back in real difficult
I would,
ways. Yeah.
I would do one further in the sense that, do you remember the show on Discovery Channel called Beyond 2000?
Yes, maybe.
and and,
I
and this
think.
show
I
was
think.
is supposed to be about all the amazing technologies that's in our future lah. It was called Beyond 2000 is because it's beyond the year 2000,
Right.
right. And
Yeah.
if you think about it now, we are 20 years into the future, so to speak, by that
Yeah.
standards, and I don't
Yeah.
think we are living up to the expectation of our imagination lah.
No, not at all. And if like, I mean, one of the biggest democracies in the world is half of its populace is doing a thing where they're doing what was done in the last World War or just before the last World War. It's also like, wow. I mean, it's crazy when they say history repeats itself, and they're like, nah, you don't know what you're talking about. Yeah, nah, nah, nah. But I mean, this is
See,
what it
the
is.
US is interesting. I think let's put the caveat out there is we are a couple of idiots, if I can say so. We're a couple of idiots all the way over here
Yeah,
literally thousands of kilometers and miles away, talking about something that has minimal day-to-day effect on our life, except it's filling up our YouTube feeds and social feeds, right?
yeah,
But for me, I think I follow it quite closely. I mean, I find it quite fascinating. I'm very
sure, me too.
fascinated
Yeah,
by it.
yeah,
And if I'm being a bit, how do I say? If I'm being a bit cynical, it I feel this whole thing kind of just exposes there was a charade of how the US kind of presented itself as, oh, we are democracy, we are going to liberate the world, we are the leader of the free world, and
right,
all that.
right. Yeah, yeah.
And you realize it's just a very thin veil, right? It's a very thin veil. It just takes a Trump equivalent to come in and say, screw that, we don't care about the world.
Yeah, but no, but I would see it differently in the sense that I think the past 4 years. I can't believe we're straight into American politics, but might as well. But I feel like the past 4 years has been a litmus test for all of the institutions
Mm,
that make up the American government and all of these ideals of that they stand by and the values they stand by. And I mean, America is far from perfect, and I think for all of the Top Gun, Baywatch, Knight Rider, soft power that has been in our lives. I mean, I think it's been a litmus test to see whether that this democracy can hold up. Because if they have a chance, then maybe the rest of us have a chance
mm,
as well.
mm,
Because and I always see it in ways where that's a another country of another time, of another culture, of another history. But there are aspirational values. I mean, there's a reason why our flag mirrors
Mm,
that of that country. So I mean, I try not to sort of be a bit too hard on
mm.
what's happening stateside, but it is been surreal. The past 4 years have been exhausting for me, because it's the occupant in that White House does, as you said, very little day-to-day impact on my life.
Mm.
But because of the small, flat, global world that we live in, he has made it exhausting.
Yeah, I mean,
Like,
like at home, uh, I hate to say this, but we canceled our Astro subscription many years ago, right?
wow,
So we
dang,
live
just
a very
just dropping it
so
right
we live a
now.
very
Wow,
digitally. When I say digital,
yeah,
it's YouTube, Netflix, whatever, and all that, right?
yeah,
So I follow a lot of American daytime shows just to keep up with the news, whatnot, right? So it's
yeah,
all
yeah,
these
yeah, yeah,
daily shows, Seth Meyers, Stephen Colbert, and all that. And that was my okay lah. This is my daily update on the news, and we didn't have a Malaysian equivalent per se,
hmm,
entertainment slash news kind of deal. And when Trump happened, my whole timeline was just Trump, 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 Trump. And and when you say the word exhaustive, I think that's the only word we can use. It's so exhausting, the amount of
yeah,
rubbish that's coming out of that part of the world that they have
yeah,
to talk to. They have to talk about. They don't have a choice. But I'm like, I'm talking to my wife. I'm like, if Biden wins, the only good thing that comes out of this is just that we don't have to get overwhelmed with this news and rubbish. And oh my God, can you believe he said that? Can you believe this is happening? Can you believe it's
yeah.
done?
Like, can you believe he said that? Is the thing that we've been like hearing and thinking, preoccupying ourselves for the past. I mean, it'd be nice if they have like a boring administrative bureaucrat kind of president, which like that'll be a delight.
I don't know, man. I mean, I, 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 I must confess, I'm by default, I consider myself an optimist, right? So I'm not a cynic, but not
Yeah,
by a long
yeah,
shot. I am an optimist, but at the same time, I don't know what it means that Trump survived 4 years without getting impeached and kicked out or arrested or whatnot, right?
yeah,
I
yeah,
don't know what
yeah,
it means that the Republican Party, or at least 95%, 99% of it, allowed him
yeah,
to do whatever he has to do. And
yeah,
I don't know what it means that, 75 million Americans or 70 million Americans now still want him to be the president,
yeah, yeah,
at
yeah, yeah,
any
yeah,
cost, even at the cost of, any fraudulent means necessary. They still want him to be
yeah.
president. So I don't know what that means, right? What does that say about them as a people? I don't know. I don't know what that means.
Yeah, but I mean, I think that phenomenon that you're referring to has lived with with the Malaysian experience
Mm,
to some degree for a long time, right? I just like to maybe tell myself that Malaysians have been a little bit more familiar with reading between the
mm,
lines, and the folks who benefit from the ways of the past were sort of that small percent, but a huge class of society actually has to read between the lines and watch over their shoulder and do the right things and nod and all of these kind of
mm.
things. And there was no momentum of authority to really question
Yeah.
that, right? And America, but of course, America has always had that. But now, of course, with the advent of technology and social media, and Donald Trump, I guess, found a way to really harness and tap into
Mm,
some time of sentiment and sensitivities that was being ignored, and obviously that community in America is hurting a lot.
mm,
And I think that, I mean, for me, that says something. There's about 70 odd million Americans who who have been hurting, socially, economically. So I don't think you can ignore that.
mm,
I don't always think that, of that 70 million block, a lot of them, okay, they believe in like the rhetoric and the macho man
mm.
kind of act, but like I think a lot of them are trying to latch on to a thing where they haven't gotten a fair shake, and
Hmm.
automation and technology and globalization has left them behind, and nobody's figuring out a way to improve their life. So I think there's a huge
You,
there's
you
a
know
huge part of
the
that.
I think the one that I struggle with, right, and the one that I struggle with is, even if we ignore Americans, right? Let's just ignore Americans, and I've said this a few times before. Uh,
But thanks to all your American listeners who are listening in right now, I'm sure there are a
the
handful.
Malaysians
You
who
never
went to
know.
US who are listening to.
Sure,
But
sure.
the even now, even if we chalk off the American experience as something that we don't know unless you live there, like, right? And
Yeah.
very close to home for me, like my mom is a Donald Trump fan, right?
Yeah.
And
Right. 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 Yeah.
before the presidency and the whole run, I probably would watch a show with Donald Trump because it's stupidly entertaining. Sorry, I take that back. It's entertaining, right? Like like The Apprentice and all that. You would watch it, right? I mean, it's
Yeah.
watchable programs, lah.
I remember when I started watching it. I think it might have been summer 2002. It was the first. It was, I think, the first summer that I was overseas. I was just about to do my degree in Canada, and I remember NBC just promoting The Apprentice. And I kid you not, I was like, "Oh, I don't know enough about business. I got to learn
Yeah, yeah.
from this guy." And then I think about 3, 4 episodes in, I was like,
Mm.
"Is this what like a rich smart man sounds
Mm.
like?" Because it sounds a little bit funny. But I was a university kid, so I didn't know what I was doing. So I said, like, "Hey, let's just keep watching." But
Yeah,
yeah,
but in the sense that I think for me, my turning point was after listening to the things that he was saying, right, and the things that represent. I was like, maybe this guy not so bright lah. I mean, yeah, and
yeah, yeah, yeah,
okay, even if it's not about being smart or stupid lah, but there's no morals attached to this man lah, right? I think that was a
no,
that was
no,
a big issue for me lah.
no, yeah, yeah, yeah,
And
like
yeah,
character and things like
but even
that.
even people like I give the example closest to home, my mom. She doesn't that those things don't face her. For her, it's like, oh, he speaks his mind, and I hear that a lot when it comes to Trump, right? Oh, this guy
Mm,
is he speaks his mind,
mm,
and I'm like, yeah,
yeah,
he does, but are you listening to what he's saying? Because it's quite disturbing, like what he's speaking his mind, but it's
yeah. I mean, I understand. I've and I've got family members of a similar ilk who share those kind of
mm,
sympathies. My problem is I'm having a contrarian point of view
mm,
only works if it's not contrarian just for the sake of being
mm,
contrarian, but it's like it's something that you didn't think
mm,
of, right?
mm,
That's like really radical, interesting
mm.
idea. Everything that he's been saying has been done by playbook of like the fascists
Yeah,
of the
yeah.
past. So like, which bit of this have are we not trying to learn from? So
So then that becomes the I didn't imagine we will start the pod with the US, but I suppose that's what's in the news now, lah, right? Okay,
I
but
guess,
having said that, right, what does that mean, right? If 70 million people and headed by Donald Trump, supported by the Republican Party, believe in these things, are willing to, you know, throw democracy in the wind to make sure Trump tries to get another term and whatnot. What does that mean? What for me, it, the words that he used, like oh, it's like a fascist regime, for me, that's exactly what comes to mind, right? For me, like this is like very clear cut. They're not even hiding the fact that this is how they feel, this is what they want, and the message to the rest of the US is get in line, or you're gonna be killed, lah, or you'll be killed in the street. We don't care. And I think Trump has said that as
yeah,
well, right? I think that's very disturbing, lah. For a country who
yeah,
who regularly invades other countries in the name of democracy,
yeah.
and you,
And I see the irony of it. And here's the thing. I think they're in a peculiar test right now. So everything from what kicks off on January 20th onwards, I think America is still not in the red zone yet, as dire as the past 4 years
mm,
or these results. I still feel they're in the sort of the yellow into the red
okay,
zone, and I still feel that there are switches and knobs to be turned and levered so that like that sort of normalcy. But it's going to take a
yeah,
while,
yeah,
it's going to take a while. This entire thing has been building up for at least a decade now. So
yeah, man. I mean, I do hope, as you said, January 20th, there's actually a real change. Somebody else gets
yeah,
inaugurated.
yeah. Look at this. Is this what your podcast is about? Just like talking straight about American
No,
politics. What?
I don't. But
How did we get here?
dude, I keep telling, and I feel like a broken record because I keep telling people I'm not interested in politics, right? But eventually, the conversation somehow gets. But kudos to us. It's not local politics, like kudos.
But believe it or not, Ija, like I've been doing a lot less of reading on politics as much as I used to be so
Mm,
immersed
mm,
into it. And I think even with the American version, I think the only reason why you're keeping up, as you
mm,
said, it's all around us and in the news. But I think also I don't know. I think I mean I remember when I was in my 20s, man. I studied political
Mm,
science, and I was into sort of understanding local politics in Malaysia, but of course I was studying overseas in Canada, and you learn all of these things. You go to protests and you go to sort of rights march and all of that kind of stuff. And I look back and was like, wow, that 23-year-old boy, mangat man,
where is
and
that
like
guy?
right where is that guy
Yeah.
right now? And I kid you not, I often ask myself
Mm,
like, so how am I giving back? What's my act of civil disobedience?
mm,
What's the thing that I'm trying to do? And I think you know we all have our own respective
mm,
ways, and I'm hoping for my generation and the ones after me, it's not about retweeting stuff. It's
mm,
about actually doing something
mm,
and applying some sort of change. And it's really really
mm.
hard, especially in this world where everything belongs to the phone.
Yeah.
So I think maybe. And I still, that's the question I'm still asking myself. What am I doing? What is my part?
Mm. Do
Right.
you feel
And
there's an obligation? Do you feel there's an obligation on you to?
No, and not, it's not an obligation. It's I want to, because this is home. This is this is where my family is from.
Mm,
This is where my family's family is
mm,
from. This is like multiple generations. I mean, these are where my dearest friends
okay.
are. And dude, I mean, you know, with the world the way it is right now, like you're like, do I? I mean,
Mm,
Malaysia came out really in a way in which the world revealed and
mm,
represented itself during this COVID
mm.
thing. You're like, for all intents and purposes, and there's a lot to be complaining
Yeah.
about how things have been done here. But by and large, like, man, this land has been
Mm,
lucky.
mm.
Just over the centuries. I mean, it's got this little charm to it that keeps things on the way, and it is paradise, but it's polluted by stuff along the way,
No,
lah. But you know what I
no, no.
mean, like,
You're absolutely right in the sense that um, I do feel that you know keeping the politics of it aside, lah, I do feel as a country we have done very well, right? As a
yeah,
country, I mean, reading about what's going on, even the U.S., UK, Italy, and all that, right? How the so-called first world nations, how they
yeah,
managed it versus how a small developing country like Malaysia, which they would refer to as a
mm,
third world nation, how we handled it over here. And I think it's not so much. I don't think it's about the leaders making the right calls. I think it's about the people kind of like
sure,
communally agreeing to, hey, for this is what's good for everybody lah. So we have to do these
yeah,
things instead of having a
yeah,
individualistic. No, it's my right to go to the gym. It's my right to go to the park. It's my right to do this. It's my right to that.
yeah,
I know all this
yeah,
sense
yeah,
of liberty and dumbness, and
yeah.
so in that sense, I think we did very well. I mean, in this not very well as a scorecard, but very well as in I think our reaction was.
Yeah, but also just, I mean, on the people side of things, by and large in this country, like, the I don't know how you want to say it, like the capital that we have with each other is quite
Mm,
strong. As much as these politicians don't know what they're talking about, because they're trying to sort of
mm, mm,
conquer and divide
mm,
and get
mm,
votes. And I understand the rhetoric, that's your job. But from people to people, about how people treat each other at the supermarket, or how we greet each other at the hospital and care for each other, all
yeah.
of that, like, by and large, like, we've got smart people, great people, hardworking people. And I think, because Malaysians also have high standards also.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
We're not happy at this. We want to,
Yeah.
what, if London is at this, we want here at a cheaper
Yeah.
price too, like, you know what I mean, like, we're impressive people to
Yeah. But
to get a
how
hold
do you
of.
think? Number one, since bringing it back home, right? How do you think? What has been your 2020 new normal, or have you been affected as such, or what have you been up to in 2020, and how has COVID kind of?
I mean, 2020 hasn't been easy because um, you may know, but your viewers and listeners may not know. But I was working at BFM, the radio
Mm,
station,
mm,
89.9, for a number of years. I was close to just shy of nine
wow.
years, and so I took the decision to sort of close that chapter at the end of February,
Okay.
and wanted to sort of begin a new
Okay.
chapter of my professional career,
Okay.
so to speak. And then, like, March kicks
Mm-hmm.
in, boom, and then suddenly every plan that you kind of thought you had
Mm,
just goes
mm,
away. And of course it's been a struggle in that light for me. But if that was difficult for me, tak payah nak imagine anybody else
Mm,
lah.
mm.
Memang everybody had such a myriad
Yeah.
of experiences, right? And I think it literally took me maybe, 4 months
Mm.
to get out of the hole, so to
Okay.
speak, and like begin engaging and thinking and acting and making decisions that would, because I think the first 3-4 months I was just moping around, like being angry at the world, and you know,
Okay.
I and I mean, in the first 2 months or 3 months, there's some weird times, like like because you're in you're in your own space for a long time, and you're lucky that you have your own
Mm,
space and that you
mm.
have food, but the the impact that this has had, the partial lockdowns, the full lockdowns, the inability to see family and friends,
Mm.
it's been a tricky one.
Yeah. I mean, I must say that I probably don't relate to a lot of what you're saying only because I am a self-confessed hermit. I am happy staying at home.
Yeah. No, so here's the thing. I've got a friend who's exactly like you, and I'm kind of like, they were so calm and so at ease. I'm like, what are you eating, drinking, smoking that allows you to be in this kind of
No, but
zen?
but actually, okay. To be frank, I was already on a I need to figure things out in 2020 kind of deal, and
Yeah, right.
um, I run a small merchant. Yeah, no,
Professionally,
yeah. I mean,
yeah.
overall, right? I run like a small merchandising company,
Overall,
right? So
yeah,
I felt the impact of COVID back in November, December because my suppliers in China,
right.
they were like, "Oh, we can't do this. There's lockdown here. There's lockdown there." And I remember having conversations with some of my suppliers here, vendors here, and we were almost like laughing about, "Oh man, that's insane. Oh, how are we?" So our problem was we had demand in terms of our customers wanted stuff. We couldn't figure out supply, right? I said, "What a weird world. We couldn't get supply." And we are kind of like, "Oh man, imagine this is gonna happen to us." Oh no way, da, da, da. And then we heard that one of our friends went there who went to China on a business trip, and we were like, "Oh dude, we're not seeing that guy for at least 3 months, right? Give him,
Right.
we don't know whether he has COVID or whatever, right?" So it felt very distant, right? And then fast forward a couple of months, and then we're like, "Holy shit, it's here, and this is our
Yeah.
reality, right?" So then suddenly, and merchandising is all about, it's marketing. If companies are willing to spend t-shirts for promotion or buying gifts and dog gifts and all that stuff, yeah,
Events
right.
and stuff. Yeah.
And when the event industry was basically shut down, we took a
Yeah.
massive hit. I know some
Yeah. Yeah.
huge companies who like laid off almost 90%
Yeah.
of their staff and all that,
Mm.
which is tough, right? So I was like in a little bit of quandary as well. Home life, I was happy being at home, right? So that was not a big issue. But when it came to work, I was like, holy shit, like, what now, right?
Yeah.
So that the work part for me, yeah, I can relate where I was like, what's gonna happen now?
No, and I think the thing that has reminded me of this thing is just the ability to pivot and like do something new. And it's a slight small blessing, because when I was younger, I was relatively convinced that, because I was not like an A student, I was definitely in
I find that
the
hard to believe,
C
man.
plus. No, no, but
For real.
true story. Like, yeah, C plus. Like, my life academically was dictated by the C plus only until maybe Form 5, Form 6, and by Form 5, Form 6, I was in Australia
Mm,
already. And even then, I was just about to climb onto the B thing,
okay,
right? But a slight change. But for most of primary school and up to PMR, C's,
okay.
right? C's, and 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 of course, not only that, it was that coupled with the inability to the inability to be a master of something.
Mm,
Like, I was not good at that one
mm.
thing. I was okay
You
at
were thinking
tennis,
about
and I
it
was
like
okay.
even back then. You're talking about in school, PMR.
Yeah, I knew that. I knew that in standard 6 and Form 1, because I said, oh, he's really good at math. He's really good at
Mm,
running. What am I good at?
mm,
Like, and so my entire experience was, oh, I could do a little bit of
mm,
everything, right? Like, I was like a jack of all
mm,
trades kind of
mm,
thing, and that notion has carried with me for a long time. But now, what's been in some ways quite revealing to me is that I'm probably utilizing my jack of all trades now in this
mm,
environment,
mm.
probably at its most now, because there is that self-reliance kind of thing that you've always had to figure it out and make do so that you didn't sink.
Okay,
I've always had to like figure out how to
okay.
swim, right? So, and I think I
But
mean
but do you
I've
think it is a factor of being a jack of all trades, or do you think it is maybe it's called to your
yeah,
character to be a bit more resilient, lah. That means yeah.
I think it's both, but I think at least on the aspect of being resilient, I've always been confident because, like, in the sense that I've always had to work a little bit harder than the next guy because I wasn't as good or I wasn't as better, I wasn't as smart or whatever. I've always had that
Okay.
bit, but I always found that people would find their calling or specialization. I remember, like, in first year or second year, I said, "Oh, what are you majoring in?" Like, how do you know you want to major in
Mm.
that? Standard 4, we had one of those, like, oral
Mm, mm,
exams, and they
mm,
ask you
mm,
questions, or what do you want
mm,
to be? And, like, I saw my friends say, "I want to be a fireman." I'm
mm,
like, what do you know about being a fireman? And like some guys, oh, I want to be a quantity
mm.
surveyor. Like, I said at 374, I didn't know these
But bro,
words, right? I knew my
I mean, okay, sorry to stop you, right?
yeah.
But don't you think when you know at whatever age when you talk to somebody and they go and they say like I want to be a fireman,
Mm.
the for me, right, the coming across somebody who is so convinced they know what they want, I think that's fascinating. I know it's fascinating,
Yeah.
right?
Fascinating to
Yeah,
me too. Yeah. Yep. Big.
and in the
Yeah.
sense that uh, I know in a lot of ways, especially if you say fireman in Malaysia, is oh you're not going to make big bucks lah, right? Oh you're not going to you're not going to be driving fancy cars or living in a big house and whatnot. But in a way, I don't even care about that, right? In the sense that if you know what's going to make you happy, you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah. Yeah. If your jam is running into a building that's on
yeah,
fire, like, who am
yeah. I
I
mean that
to
clarity, right? For me, that is so freaking impressive, man.
Yeah, yeah,
You
yeah,
know,
yeah. And I've met. I mean, I've got a lot of close friends who fit that
mm,
description. Like, that's just who their being is. And I think there's another category of folks which I think I belong into, which is like, I think I'm kind of decent at this, and yeah, I think I can make money. Oh yeah, I'm actually happy at it. Like, you're figuring it out
mm,
as you go
mm,
along, kind of thing.
mm.
There's like a cycle of momentum that really sort of gives you that clarity. Like, it's not the
You know,
clarity
I
that
would
people
probably
just have.
relate
Like,
more to your view on
yeah,
that. And if I could add on, I think for me, if I'm very bad at evaluating myself, lah. If you ask me to evaluate myself on anything, right?
who is it?
It
Yeah.
there are a lot of little trumps around who think they're the give God gives to
They're
world,
the
right? Yeah,
best. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
and
yeah, yeah, yeah.
they are, you know. So I'm really bad at it, right?
Yeah.
But I think one of the things that I did early on when I started working was, trying to talk to people who are smarter than me, like get kind of mentors and friends
Yeah.
around you, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
they will kind of tell you, hey, you're kind of good at this thing. This is probably suitable. You probably should look at that. You're not very good at this, and you're not very good at this is very painful
Mm.
to hear, lah. But I've heard it. I've heard it enough
Very.
times to like, okay, like if I'm not good, I'm not good,
Yeah.
lah. That's fine, right?
Same,
And
same.
I think that's uh, been a bit of blessing in my side, in the sense that not so much uh, my skill or my knowledge or whatnot, but kind of like having smarter people around me who kind of like help
Yeah.
me guide me in a sense, right? And I don't know whether that's been the case. Do you believe in like
Well,
mentorship and stuff like that, or
let me get to that. But then, could I just ask, like, do you know if you've felt that change on yourself now as a result of this awareness?
yeah? I think for me, I come from very humble beginnings, right? So my expectation of
Yeah.
the world was not a lot. So there are people people have come in, when I was working, I used to run a restaurant in my family, a small Indian restaurant. And then I
Nice.
had this idea of, I want to do something. I want to start a t-shirt company. It's like 11, 12 years ago. And I
Yeah, I
was
love it.
starting and we were selling some t-shirts. And then somebody came along, was a customer at the restaurant who just sat down and he was like, oh, you should get some investment and do something with it. I'm like, get investment? What's that? I mean, yeah, you can do a deck. What's a deck?
Yeah.
I'm like, what's a
Right.
deck?
Yeah.
What's the business plan? No, I don't even know what a business plan is, right? And then they're like, oh, yeah, okay, I have a sample. I'll email it to you. And, so these
Yeah.
kind of people come and tell like, hey, man, you could probably do something more.
So so going back
Yeah.
to your mentorship question, right? I always feel that exchange that you're just
Mm,
describing right there, I feel like, at least in my experience, growing up in middle class Malaysia in the 80s and 90s, like, I really felt I only came across
mm,
that outside of my more academic syllabus, so to
mm.
speak. I came across that far too late in
Okay.
life. And I've been playing catch
Mm,
up maybe for past 13
mm,
years to get better
mm,
at understanding the opportunities and the areas in which you can
mm.
contribute and bring value to things. I wish I had learned that much earlier. I think maybe that's what Kamahiran Hidup was trying to teach me, but I didn't listen. I
If
don't
you
know.
could
I
go
don't
back in
know.
time, right? I mean,
Yeah.
no, dude. I mean, if left, okay. Here's another controversial. Uh, I wouldn't say an idea, a thought process that I'll share with you, right? I have the thought process that your peers will probably not help you grow, right? And I don't mean it
Yeah.
in a materialistic way, like, oh, your peers must be rich to help you. I mean, in the sense that, you are at a level. If your friends are with you at that level, we are all very comfortable where we are, right? So it's going to
Yes.
take
Yes.
you interacting with people at a higher level for them to kind of like open you up to,
Yeah.
hey, you can do
Yeah.
this and you can do that, and start help you connecting the dots moving
Yeah.
forward.
Yeah.
And that makes a big difference. I think that's the difference between, like,
Huge.
being like a jago kampong and you're like, oh yeah, I'm a terror hotshot
Yeah.
among all my friends. And then you
Yeah.
realize,
And
like, oh shit, I actually have so much to grow. I got so much to do, so much to grow, right?
yeah, it's the analogy that I sort of think about and refer to is, and I don't know how many tennis fans are out there, but when you're an amateur shitty tennis
Mm,
player, where on one rally you're good and the next rally it's
mm,
horrible and the next rally is
mm,
great, what happens is that when somebody else better than you hits the ball
mm,
back to you, somehow you hit the ball back
mm,
better and then they hit it back. But if you're playing with somebody who gives you a weird bouncy
mm,
non-bouncy
mm,
ball and then you end up hitting the ball out of this, it sort of repeats
mm,
itself a little
mm,
bit.
mm.
And I'm with you on that, man. Like my only frustration has been that, um, yeah, I mean, my ambition and my wanting to learn more, I mean, it might have only, it kicked in a lot later than I would have preferred. I
Mm.
think I probably was probably in my mid 20s when I got my first, I started my first job
Mm.
maybe like,
That's quite early, right? I mean,
um
okay, like mid 20s. Okay, you're not late, not late,
yeah,
late.
not late, but I think so. I did odd jobs even when I was
Okay.
younger, like 19. I was working in retail, like in Mega Mall and Wanutama. I was selling baju. I think women's Top Shop and
Okay.
Top Girl. I was doing
I thought you
that,
said women's
and I
underwear. I was
did
like, whoa, okay.
well, kind
Yeah,
of like
yeah.
depending on which shop, right? I would do Top Shop, Top Man, all that kind of stuff. But so I was doing all things. I was selling Maxis 3G cards when
Mm,
they were first coming out. I was doing all of these things, and I really
mm,
enjoyed it just because I wanted the experience. And but even in those experiences, which were terribly
mm,
useful, there was this other layer of like, oh, how do you run something to create value and then therefore generate income on a sustainable manner? Like, I was part of the system. I was part of a
mm,
cog, but I wanted to actually know more about
mm,
the actual thing in
mm,
itself. And I think by the time I started my publishing house in 2007, that's when you learn by throwing yourself into the
mm.
deep end. You make great mistakes, you learn from those mistakes, you make a little bit of money, you invest that money and all that kind of stuff. But I mean, I'm still learning, and of course, this entire exercise right now of my current project right now, which is my podcast. I mean, that there's so many things that I'm applying that I've learned for the past 13 years into
Mm,
this one, so that the opportunity doesn't take so long. I'm
mm.
hoping that I can accelerate the lessons and implement
You
them
know,
in a way
when you talk
that's
to
meaningful.
uh, when you talk to investors, right? So I was a few years ago, I was raising some funds, talking to all investors and all that. So when you talk to like money guys about money, so they have a very cut and dry way of looking at things, right? So
Yeah,
it is
yeah,
for us
yeah.
right now. We're having this very fluid. This is how I feel. I hope and I feel. But investment guys are not so much like that, right? But but there's
No,
wisdom
no.
in that sense that when I talk to some of them, and they think that, oh, serial entrepreneurs who have failed before is a good thing, right? My knee jerk reaction would be, guys who have failed is bad. Oh, I failed so many times. I
Yes,
rather not
yes,
share my
yes, yes.
failures, right?
Yeah, 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 yeah,
I don't
yeah,
have
yeah.
successes to show these guys, right? But when you talk to investors who understand more than just the numbers, right? So the way you see it is exactly how you say, right? In the sense that you probably have learned a lot in your first venture or second venture or whatnot, and you're probably not going to repeat the same mistake, lah. And betting on somebody like
Yeah,
you is probably you're going to have a shorter runway towards success, as opposed to somebody who's
yeah,
going to make all those mistakes because they're doing it for the first time.
yeah,
But
yeah,
that wisdom of you know failure is not it's not the end. It's helps you kind of build towards the future.
yeah.
That knowledge doesn't come easy. I mean, and it's not obvious, lah.
No, it
And
doesn't.
it's not obvious. That's the scary part.
And it's not obvious, but also then you need to actually do a process that allows you to reflect take down and implement again, because sometimes you meet people who say, oh, I've had 20
mm,
years experience.
mm, mm,
Noted. And I'm not gonna
mm,
knock on
mm,
that, but like if you're still doing
mm,
the same thing you did 20 years ago
mm,
as
mm,
the primary thing, surely like you're just repeating yourself.
mm,
So I'm trying to be conscious of that
mm.
myself. I don't want to tell a young person or a young intern saying, oh, Ezra's been in this industry for however many years. It means jack all. For me, it's kind of like a football match. I don't know which footballer you say this, like you're only as good as your last
Right.
match.
Mm, 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 mm,
And I don't think business has a longer sort of time frame to evaluate
mm.
performance, but I think you need to know what exactly it is that you're improving on. Taking note of that is tough, because then you got to think about it, feel it,
No, man,
implement it.
I'll give you a tough one, right? Uh, one of the startups that I founded was not doing so well, so it kind of looked like this all this money that we raised was going to the toilet lah. We're going to have to
Yeah.
shut the company down, and I had this very awkward, difficult conversation with one of the investors, and I was like, "What does this mean?" Because I personally, as an individual, I feel like I failed you lah, because you invested in me
Mm.
on the venture, and you know,
Mm.
and I think it's very important to get the right people to be on your corner lah, in a sense, because I think what
Yeah.
I was expecting was for the person to go like, screw this, man, I just lost so much money, it's okay, whatever lah, that's life, right?
Mm.
That's the filtered, no profanity version of what I was expecting, right?
Mm.
And what I actually got was uh this individual asking me, so what did you learn, right? What has the last couple of years meant to you, right?
Mm.
And what did you learn lah? And I was able to articulate, if I were to do it again, I wouldn't have done this, and I wouldn't have done that. I wouldn't have done it like
Mm.
this. I think this is how I would have done it differently. And this was kind of like summarizing a long list of excuses lah, in a sense. But kind of like,
Sure.
saying this is what I learned. And for them, their response was, okay lah. So this is me paying your tuition fees lah for you to learn, right?
Yeah.
This
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
okay.
Dude,
It's a
and
bet. I and yes, I lost money, but it's a bet. I knew going in I could lose money, right? So, and I think,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
uh,
But I think the key part here is also, if I may, I think it's them seeing something in you that you can't
hmm,
see
hmm,
in yourself yet, and so they had already accounted
hmm,
for what you described to
hmm,
them.
hmm,
So I've had many people of that in my
hmm,
life. So you were asking before about the
hmm,
mentor thing. I mean, I'm a big believer in
hmm,
that, because um, you know I'm very, very lucky, because my parents did me good. They did me and
hmm,
my siblings good. They get the A on the parent scale. Well done to mom and dad. But outside of that
hmm.
pocket, you in the real world, whether it's friends or friends' parents or teachers or business mentors or whatever, like these kind of relationships are really, really important. But you when you're late teens, early 20s, you sort of don't appreciate
Mm,
it until much, much later, right?
mm,
And yeah, so I mean, I've been lucky. I still try and keep in touch, and when they enter into your life, when the way they do, you don't realize like just how unique and specific that interaction
mm.
is between you and yourself, because you guys have different
Yeah,
worlds, you guys have
yeah.
different, but you click on something, and might be just your mutual interest
Mm,
in fishing
mm,
or
mm.
whatever, but in just through that they want to share what they know, and you want to share what you have. So I think I'm a big believer in that,
But
for sure.
uh, there's no but I think my when I share these type of stories to some some of my friends or even relatives, right? They don't relate, right?
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah, yeah,
and
yeah, yeah.
and my guess, right? And it's a guess lah, right? My guess is that these kind of uh relationships, like mentorship and all that, it seems to be the exception to the rule, right? Where the rule is basically everybody mind your own business, work yourself, and you become successful or you don't become successful, whatever. But you don't go around minding other people's business and listening to other people, going and right.
Yeah.
So this idea of even seeking advice is such a
Yes.
it's alien to our day to day process, right?
Yeah. I will. So I agree with all of that, and I'll do one step further. I think, and I don't know if it's the same for the kids in school now, or when they used to go to school, I guess. Like just even actually the notion of raising your hand in class and asking a
Yes.
question. I mean, I think I did that for the first time, and again, I didn't do it at all when I was from standard 1 to form 3 in Malaysia, and form 4 to form 6 in Australia. I saw in form 4 all of these like Australian confident kids like raising their hands, asking the most stupid questions, but they were really confident. And I saw that when I was 14 or 15 or whatever. And then I said, I want to do that too. And I want to raise my hand and ask a
Yeah.
question. 2 years later, I asked a question.
But dude,
It took me so long just to like work up the courage because I was like trained. No, don't ask the
was
teacher.
there a turning point? Was there something that pushed you, in that after the 2 years, something that made you ask a question, or was it a gradual?
It was a gradual thing because like it felt, I think as towards the end by form 6 and then of course into the early uni years, it was this point of like they are already there trying to help you because it's a difficult and complex thing that we're absorbing. And if I don't ask the question, then rugi me lah, like shame on me lah. I mean,
Your loss.
it's literally my loss. It's like going to a buffet and saying, "I'll just have the napkin, thanks." Like, it's a whole buffet.
But why is that, right? Like even I went through the Malaysian education system, primary, secondary, and you're absolutely right in the sense that there's so much shame. I mean, there's so much shame in
Yeah,
I mean, it's not that
and
it's not in
and
putting up your hand or in getting it wrong. There's so much shame in like what? Because if you are 100% sure you are
and
right,
doing anything.
if 100% you are right, and the teacher's gonna like celebrate and pop champagne for you, you'd be happily doing that. But there's so
Yeah,
much shame in
yeah,
what if it's wrong? What if I am
yeah,
not right? Where did
yeah,
this come from, dude? Like, where was it indoctrinated in us that?
yeah. I don't know. I mean, I think I don't know. That's a great question, and I feel like, and kids are not the kindest people sometimes.
Yeah,
I don't
yeah,
know, like they look cute and cuddly, but like, they're capable of some
yeah.
horrific stuff and the injury that they do to another child
Yes, yes,
emotionally.
yes,
so,
yes.
so, and I think, and I don't know where that came from, but sometimes a lot of it's just built in your head too. And when you're a young kid that doesn't have confidence or you don't have the space and opportunity or the ability to communicate something, then and a lot of it is just that inability to communicate because you know, the rote learning stuff was, remember your times tables
Yeah,
and remember these answers and all that. Like it didn't really move anything up here. It was just like a storage
yeah.
space and like a hard drive. And I think once the learning process for me changed, where I was actually having to use my own thoughts and ideas and assessments and then express an opinion or a thought, that's when I felt like my personal growth started, where it wasn't just a case of remembering the dates and remembering the answers and remembering the A plus B equals C stuff. That when I started having to think and apply some critical thinking stuff. But all of those things are just skills that, again, it's the teachers or these mentors who are helping you identify, and those are
No, I have a
they,
2-year-old son, and
what's his name?
Jax, Jax, yeah,
Jax.
yeah.
Look at
Because my
that.
parents screwed me with Ija, and I'm like, I gotta do
Yeah.
it to my own son, if not paying it forward. But the thing I struggle with, like you said, right, is I still haven't put a finger on where this indoctrination of shame and like especially like peer pressure, the idea of you could send your kid to school and a bunch of other kids could shame him so much to do something stupid, right?
Yeah, yeah,
And then
yeah.
so I kept asking myself, okay, yeah, I too had all this, didn't raise my hands in class and all that. Where did that come from, right? And then now the struggle I have,
So,
sorry, you were saying? You're the,
no, go
yeah,
ahead,
so the
sorry.
struggle I have now is I'm trying to like kind of find a line between where's the needle in terms of discipline versus breaking somebody's spirit, right? You don't want to discipline a child to a point where you break their spirit and they just become very obedient and submissive, and then they don't have a mind of their own, right? And you also don't
Yeah,
want them to be a piece of shit, for lack of a better word, lah. Piece of shit kid
sure,
who
for sure.
goes around bullying people
Yeah,
and creating chaos, right? So
yeah,
where's that? And I don't have an answer for that, but it's a question, lah.
yeah, yeah. I don't know if I have an answer for it, but I think the answer could potentially be found in the first episode of my
Mm,
podcast, the Ezra Zaid Project. I speak to my ex
mm,
housemaster from
yeah.
Australia, and I've known him for about more than 20
Mm,
years now.
mm,
And we spoke a lot about the culture that we had in the boarding
okay.
house, which was full of the stuff that we've been
Mm,
talking about, right? Some of these unkind
mm,
elements. And basically, the stuff that he and I sort of worked on together to sort of almost like change the
mm.
culture
While you were there.
of the whilst I
Okay.
was there. And of course, he would continue to do that even after I left with the school. And it's sort of now gone school
Mm,
wide, statewide, and gone out to other countries. And I think what he talks about is actually the the ability to have this like resilient culture. And a resilient culture is essentially this notion that you get to be yourself. You don't have to pretend who you
mm,
supposed to
mm,
be. You get to make
mm,
mistakes, so that failure isn't this like horrific
mm,
thing. It's just actually just part of a small thing, and better if you make the mistakes earlier on so that you can improve faster. Like, I think the answer lies in the culture, and of course in the culture I'm trying to think, well, is it the culture of the school, or is it the
mm,
culture at home and the parents, and it's all of these different worlds that we live in,
mm,
right? So I think, to your question of with your son
mm.
Jax, right, it's you set the tone.
Yeah. Mm.
Again, if you can go to football, it's the tone in the
Mm,
dressing room,
mm,
right?
mm, mm,
Right. If you don't get the tone in the dressing room and the training pitch right, the performance on Saturday or Sunday is not gonna reflect
mm.
that.
Yeah.
And I think that's, and there's all sorts of different aspects to this, but I think it does set about setting tone in some of the values that you believe in. So, I mean, discipline, it's an interesting one
Mm,
as well, and what punishment does, because um, from the conversation that I had with my
mm,
housemaster on the
mm,
podcast, what he says is that punishment, I think, almost entrenches behavior. It doesn't change
mm,
behavior as
mm,
well. So even the true north of why you're implementing
mm,
something, one must realize as to what actually the effects
mm,
are. Because I remember what it was like to, get hit on the
mm,
knuckles in class, stand in the
mm,
classroom chair,
mm,
and like, all of this stuff. And I wonder, or would I have done it differently if I was running that classroom? And I probably would.
mm,
I probably wouldn't have done it how my teacher
mm.
did, but that's not his bad. I think that's literally that sort of corporal punishment thing has always just been the
Yeah.
way people have found a solution to get a quick answer. But I don't think the answer
So when it
was.
comes to this idea of, let's call it corporal punishment lah, is where do you stand in the sense? The question I asked, I know it's a loaded question, but let me give some context, right? In the sense that, let me give a little bit of context.
Yeah,
In the sense
yeah,
that um, I have friends and relatives who take the stand that I was hit as a kid, so I don't believe in hitting. I don't like it, so I'm not gonna hit my child, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And there are people who feel who like I got slapped and hit when I was a kid because I did really shitty things. I was a rascal,
Yeah, yeah.
and I think I'm okay now. So I think that it's okay, lah. It's necessary, right? And so if I were to ask myself where do I fall in that, uh, I probably fall more in the latter, where if it the punishment should fit the crime lah, in the sense, right? So if you are a really shit,
Some sort of
yeah,
proportionality.
if you've done something really shitty, and I have when I was a kid, and I've gotten the shit kicked out of me by my mom, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Right,
yeah,
and I laugh when I say that because my mom's like half my size, right? So it's
yeah,
to see
yeah,
this
yeah,
little
yeah.
lady torturing this monster, this giant,
Mm.
and so in that sense that I find the idea of saying anything definitively is a problem lah. Like saying I will never hit my kid or saying I must hit my kid, right? I think both statements are. I feel it shouldn't be there lah. There shouldn't be a definitive. This is how I feel no matter what. There should be a little bit of understanding and proportionality. So
For
yeah.
sure, for sure. And I think I easy for me to talk because I'm not a parent yet,
Which makes you an expert.
and which makes me absolutely the expert. And here's the thing, because like my brother and my sister-in-law, they've got two beautiful
Mm,
kids, Reyes and Layla. They're you know Reyes is 10 and Layla's about 4 or
mm,
5. And so just observing my contemporaries, like my brother and my sister-in-law, we're in the same
Mm,
age bracket. Like just seeing them relay their expressions and actions to their kids. Like, I'm looking like that, like, oh, what decision are you gonna make now? Because it's really really
mm,
tough, and obviously, I think the aspect that people don't realize is that you're engaging with this relationship with this
mm.
child. Not it's not like 2 3
Yeah,
hours like Uncle
yeah,
Ezra. It's all day,
yeah.
every day, and it requires this
Mm,
dynamism to make sure, because it's a constant battle. When I was a kid, I was like, oh, can I get away with
mm,
this?
mm,
Ooh,
mm,
can I
mm,
get with this? Oh, can I push the
mm.
buttons here? And it's an entire
Yeah.
game, and it's I think that the notion that it's just binary to there, and I think but my thing is that I don't think I, you know I, I can't see. I'm not. I don't believe that like hitting or injuring a
Mm,
child is necessarily the way is the highway that one needs to take for them to
yeah,
realize and change their
yeah.
behavior. I think that approach is really like it's. I can understand why people used
Mm,
to do it, but also like I can really expect that people don't need to do that
mm,
now. It does require more
mm,
work, and again, I think the concern is that the injury that you can place on the
mm,
child, you don't know the effects of that
mm, mm,
action until years later. The fear that you're carrying, the
mm,
scars, and I'm not trying to sort of suggest that everyone's a snowflake
mm,
or
mm,
whatever. Like, but it's you just don't know as the person who's
mm,
making that call. You just
mm.
don't know the
No,
impact on that,
I
and then
agree with you on that,
yeah,
and I think some of the more well researched friends of mine who take the time to read and do the research, I think the biggest fear they have is this this unintended consequences
yeah,
of
yeah,
hitting a
yeah,
kid, right?
yeah,
And as much as it makes sense, it makes a lot of sense, right? Um, I have a rule when it comes to uh, dealing with my son, but also in general dealing with people, lah, right? And my
sure,
general rule is uh, not out of anger, not out of frustration, right? Right? It's
yeah,
basically even if you're having a nuclear sized fight with your wife or your girlfriend or whatnot, you know,
mm,
not to the point of, don't take action in the point of anger, lah. Not out of anger, right?
yeah, in the heat
Yeah.
of moment,
So,
yeah,
and I,
yeah,
I'm, I'm a big guy, right? So I hold this to heart because I've dated some people who think it's okay to like lose their shit and suddenly start throwing things at me, and I'm like, I could end you right now. What are you doing?
yeah,
Like, what are you doing? Like,
yeah.
and I'm literally saying those words to them. Oh, what is the thought process in
Mm,
your mind that you think you can behave
mm,
this way, right? So
yeah,
when I apply that, even like to my son, is disciplining is very clear. Don't do it because you're angry. Because if you're doing it because you're angry, that's just
yeah,
bad, lah. And I
yeah.
think that is,
And I think is what's also interesting is that as you're trying to sort of convey this to
mm,
Jax, is because he probably carries and shares the same sort of instinct and values that you
mm,
already have
mm,
already. So sometimes I feel like you can communicate like in this much more like direct instinctual tone rather than sort of the prescribed textbook kind of challenge. I think you can use the
mm,
values
mm,
of that,
mm,
but you already know that kid because
yeah.
he's your
No,
DNA,
the
right?
I
So
think for
like,
me the other side of the coin, right? When we say unintended consequences, right? I worry what's the unintended consequences of not sufficiently disciplining your kid or instilling discipline into your kid, lah, right? And
yeah,
in the sense that my view is that the world is a harsh place, lah, right? You
yeah, yeah,
go
yeah,
and screw up in the world, nobody's going to be holding your hand and wiping away your tears, and that's not going to
yeah,
happen.
yeah, yeah,
You break the law, you're probably going to end up in jail, right? Or
yeah,
worse, somebody else might hurt you because you are hurting them, right? And at what point does this realization come that, hey, you can't just do whatever you want and get away with it?
yeah,
And I feel that as much as I witness parents and kids, parents, smart parents, who kind of sit down, negotiate, explain, articulate very clearly to the kids why you want to do X and why you should do this, why you shouldn't do that, right? But at the end
mm.
of the day, it's a kid, right? So a kid, there's only so much a kid can observe and absorb, right?
I don't know. I don't know. I feel like I think kids can absorb a lot. I think there is a general. I think we don't cut them enough
Mm,
slack because I think there's a misinterpretation about what they're absorbing and
mm,
how. and this is the weirdest segue ever, but having just completed season 4 of The Crown,
Okay.
you know, Liz,
Mm,
Lilibet, I mean, great queen, but like you can clearly see the
mm,
impacts and the struggles that she's had in terms of her relationship with her
mm,
children, and it's because of the the model or the structure that she was
mm,
raised in, sort of stiff upper lip duty and all that
mm,
kind of stuff. But I don't know. I feel like they can handle a lot more than they think, and this is in good and
mm, mm,
positive
mm,
ways. And I think it's and what's the worst? I guess I would. What's the worst that can happen? Like too much information spills out. I mean, you know what I mean. I feel like I think they absorb a lot more, and especially they absorb all of the things that we're not
mm.
intending as
No,
well.
actually, what I meant was that uh, I don't think every kid, and I'm speaking in a way that realizing that I was a kid, and I kind of reflect on how did I think or how do I work through my shit, right?
Yeah, yeah,
As a
yeah,
kid, and
yeah.
I feel that not every kid has feelings and empathy as a priority,
Sure,
right?
sure,
You know,
sure.
and
Absolutely.
especially
Yeah,
boys, like boys are easily shittier than girls, like, right? In the sense that we just want
yeah.
to do,
We're just
yeah,
dummies.
and we just
Yeah,
want to
yeah,
do. We don't care about the consequences and stuff like that. And to a certain degree, when that kind of mindset goes out into the world, and when
yeah,
I see things and when you hear like really horrendous things of when it comes to stuff like rape and and stuff like
yeah,
robbing people and you hurting people and all that, and it comes to mind that where does this type of and I'm not saying these individuals are not disciplined. I'm not even saying that. We don't know, right? But I'm just saying that
yeah,
there's a mindset that they feel they can get away by doing these things, right? And
yeah, yeah, yeah.
and how do we instill that you got to give a shit about other people and you don't just you can't just live the life the way you want to live it without
Yeah. But I think I don't think, and you know this of course as you being the parent and me being the
the expert.
non-parent, the expert, which is it's not just the things that you're saying and the
Mm,
things that but they monkey see monkey
yeah.
do, right? Like, and like, in the sense that like we follow the actions and the
Mm,
intent of what's happening around us so that they have that lived
mm,
experience, right? And as a result, like that's the thing that I think they absorb the most. And I think a lot about this, especially because I owe so much to my parents, and I know how very very lucky I
mm,
am, because I know how many people don't even have the stability and the structure that I
mm,
have. And then when they come out on top in those kind of situations, I'm always so amazed, because I don't think I would have come out as
mm,
lucky if those positions were
mm.
reversed. So it is unreal about how much like that impact.
Yeah. No, I,
You
I will,
know.
I will, I will do you. I will throw a spanner into the works of our discussion, right? In the sense that, the fact remains that, if you read Malcolm Gladwell's David versus Goliath, right, and
Yeah.
he's essentially saying that if you give your child a good childhood, the chances of them being super successful is very low, right? And he sees,
Yes.
it's a direct proportion to the amount of suffering you endure as a kid. I mean, it's very
Yeah.
subjective, but you should have a,
Sure.
a, a tougher childhood in terms of challenges.
Yeah.
Kind of creates the drive for these kids to be more successful in the future, lah, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I can relate to that, right? I can relate
Yeah.
to, right? So then becomes mollycoddling, right? So in the sense that, uh, and what I wanted to say earlier was that the fact that I'm thinking so hard about, oh, how should I raise my kid? How should I instill the proper values to him, right? And then I think back about my own childhood, right? Me and my sister, we grew up in the same household, same parents, same everything.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We're two very different people, right?
For
Right.
sure.
So then I asked myself, do we really have all that much say? Like we can try and
Yeah.
mold them, right?
This is the
Yeah,
nature versus
yeah,
nurture
and and
argument. Yeah.
and
Yeah. Yeah.
absolutely, nature. I mean, nurture plays a part, but to be so arrogant as to think that, oh, I can determine how my son thinks. I think that's
Yeah.
I don't know,
I
man.
mean, if you want to go full circle of this, we can go back to Fred Trump and Donald Trump
Oh, those,
and that
yeah.
relationship. And I'm sure the impact on Don
Mm,
Jr. and Eric and all of them. Like, I mean, it's you're absolutely right. And I think, but I don't know. in a space where we want to know the answer of it's one or the
mm,
other. I think that tug of war, that
mm, mm,
tussle, is always part of the
yeah.
dynamic aspect of it. And but I like to think that um, I'm grateful to the nurturing part
Yeah.
because I am cognizant of the impact of of what that's had on
Mm,
my life. The nature stuff you can't
yeah.
control, but you got to sort of raise your hands that. But the things that you can control, just you, if you can keep your eye on that and not keep your eye on the things that you can't control, that
You know,
helps.
when I asked you to do this podcast, this was probably not all the things that I thought we will talk about. Not Trump.
What did you think we were
I
going to
actually
talk
wanted
about?
to talk to you about like the heydays of that effing show, dude. That was one of the favorite shows out there, and I swear to God, and even a buddy of mine, I have to give a shout out to Byron, a buddy of mine. He works in the Abu Dhabi. Byron,
Byron,
yeah, shout out. So he is a huge fan of the epic show, right? And he's been overseas for the longest time. When he started his cadet days as a pilot, and he's the one that kind of got me onto the show, like got me to
right?
watch the show and all that. And I, never miss an episode and all that. And he was quite instrumental when I said I wanted to, I got so much free time now, and I think there's a lot of assumptions, floating around the world, floating around my life especially. And I want to do a podcast, just having this kind of open, frank conversations with people, with no real
Yeah,
topic, just kind of getting to know, like maybe somebody watches this and
sure,
gets to know Ija a little bit better and Ezra a little bit better, right?
sure.
And he was one of those people. Like I just mentioned it to him, right? And he's doing research. Oh, I think you should do it like that. This podcast should do that. And he's suddenly giving me feedback on the formatting, how I should do it. Da, da, da. And
Yeah,
so he kind of was a big driving factor to push me to start the podcast, right?
good, good, good.
And in that sense, that's why I'm like, yeah, this guy. You're probably most definitely the favorite guest I've had on for him for sure, right? Because he
Oh
reviews every
well,
time I have a guest, he gives me a review afterwards.
Byron, I hope this is turning out the way you think it was. So I
and
no, but you're right. I think similarly, um, especially during MCO, and I saw a lot of people doing
hmm.
stuff, and I was like, it sort of prompted. I mean, I'm a competitive guy, so it sort of challenged my like, what can I
Yeah,
do? So yeah, I know what you mean.
and in that sense, right? I mean, going back to, I want to talk about what you're doing now, but
Yeah,
I gotta preface it with the effing show, right?
for sure.
Because when I saw what you guys were doing, forget the fact that you're ridiculously multi-talented. I've seen you do that song you did for Borneo, right? And
Yeah.
that was like,
Malaysia
yeah,
Day,
yeah.
Malaysia Day. Yeah,
And I was like, dude, this guy can sing as well. Like, come on, give me a break, right? And
hardly, but okay.
okay, not pop star lah, but I mean entertainment lah. I was entertained, right?
Bathroom singer.
And so how did that show actually come about? How did that effing show actually even start?
Basically, my my dear friend, former partner Hardesh
Mm,
Singh, he had sort of a small studio. I say studio, 2 bedrooms, and he and sort of arts theater practitioner, director, producer Mark Tay, they were producing this other online show called the Fairly Current Show, and
okay.
that was hosted by the current Lembah Pantai MP Fahmi
Mm,
Fazil. So they had this show in this room, right? And was bringing my dad um, to be featured on this program, and so I was just accompanying them because I
mm,
kind of like we were all the same age and stuff. So I accompanied my dad there, and I think maybe a couple of weeks after that. At the time, I was just doing book
mm,
publishing. So a couple of weeks after that, I think Mark and Hardesh brought me out to drinks and just asked me if I wanted to have my own
mm,
show. And I was like, what does that even
mm,
mean? Because I mean, I didn't do anything of the
mm,
sort at the time. So Mark, I remember the sentence that he said. He says like, I don't know, Ezra, but maybe just to have a chance at making this country a little bit better, we need more bespectacled Melayus talking to the camera. And like just the way he phrased
mm,
that
mm, mm,
sentence appealed to my
mm,
ego and my
mm,
ambition at the same
mhm,
time. And then, because I was still coming to terms about what you could do on the internet, what you
mm,
couldn't do on the
yeah.
internet. And so I asked Harish, can I just do
Mm,
anything? And it was like, it's the internet, man. It's like, we'll see like where the line gets drawn. So, and and then after that, we started doing pilots, and we brought different people together, and a lot of collaborators, and a lot of people who I still work with today. And I think at the time it was just the internet was even more exciting because video was kicking in,
mm,
and this was YouTube wasn't. I guess it was around, but I guess maybe the ability to upload on YouTube wasn't that
mm.
straightforward in 2010,
And
2009.
also
I
our
can't remember.
bandwidth, lah. If
Our
yeah,
bandwidth was
yeah.
horrible and all that, so we had to bring in our own web. We had to make our own web
Mm,
player so that it could play these like
mm.
yucky
That was a
compressed
pop
files.
TV. Yeah,
Poptv.net, that's
yeah.
right. And then so we made one episode, and then apart from my mom, I think everyone's other moms maybe watched it. And 100 episodes later, after maybe a period of 3 years or so, we had a great time. And Hardesh and I spoke about we it was something that we committed ourselves to do on the
Mm,
weekends, and it was like we were just trying something out. It was a lot of
mm,
fun. I met amazing people. I worked with amazing people. We managed to, and the core part of it is that the fact that so many people resonated with it is like a real
yeah.
bonus. But for me at the time, it was really trying to. It was just the beginning part of like putting together a voice of myself, a voice of what's happening in the country, a voice of the
Mm,
production team that was in that room, and all the creativity that was around that. We were just trying to harness a voice and a
mm.
tone. I was in my mid I was in my mid 20s, I guess, and of course in your mid 20s, mid to late 20s, your thoughts are very like
Mm,
clear, and
mm.
like you want to say
Yeah.
it and yell it and like harness it and crystallize it. And I think in that sense I got very lucky because I had this amazing team around me that we were bouncing off each other so that we could come up with a skit, come up with a song, come up with a joke, come up with some social commentary, come up with some satire that would get us in trouble. We would check it with the
Mm,
lawyer, and the lawyer said, "Yeah, you could get in trouble, but we'll see what
mm,
happens." And we had a great time. Yeah, many police reports after as well. So, and you would meet we would meet the people that we would make fun of, these
mm,
politicians and stuff. And I remember one prominent politician saying, yeah, we watched the bit that you made fun of me with the whole family. And that I mean, for me it feels nice because they understood the intent of the
yeah.
joke. It's And we put a lot of effort into making sure that we were making fun we were making fun of something. We knew what the target
Mm,
was. And I was very precious about the notion of what comedy
mm,
is, because um, it's knowing to punch up rather than punch
mm,
down. And when you're doing these kind of things, you can get a little bit sloppy because you want the
mm,
laughs,
mm,
you want the big
mm.
views. But I was I really enjoyed the episodes um, that was just a little bit random. There was one episode with like a talking tomato, and like that appeals to me. A lot of people like the episode where we're making fun of a former prime minister, or making fun of an interview that somebody did on Al Jazeera or something. But I mean, it had a lot of different things, and it was a lot of fun.
Yeah. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it feels like when that effing show was on, and it feels it was the days before views and clicks, was it?
Yeah, that's right.
And to a certain degree, I think everything since, like, now, whenever anybody says I'm starting a show, I'm doing something, right, it is all about views, clicks, monetization, how can I commercialize it, blah blah blah, right?
Yeah,
And even for something so silly like starting a simple podcast like this, I say, yeah, I just want to talk to people on a podcast. And even the your best meaning friends, they go like, oh, how are you going to monetize it? How many views do you think you can get? How many clicks you get?
sure.
And my response to all of them has always been, let me just do this and see whether it's good. Because if it's shit, I don't want to monetize shit, right?
You're absolutely right, and I share the same view. And it's funny because as a result of making that effing show, that was actually when me and Hardesh started our digital media
Mm,
company, Pop
mm,
Digital, which created all of these other verticals and brands and stuff. But that effing show in itself didn't make
mm.
money.
Yeah.
we did, and a lot of brands came to us wanting to sponsor, but they said, oh, you can't say this, you
Yeah.
can't say that, but yeah, but then that's not my
Yeah.
show. And you want to piggyback on the vibe or the brand of the show, but you don't really want to put your neck on the line on
Mm.
it. And as a result, and I think that's the thing, right? I mean, we don't know creatively, at least, and this is where the numbers people don't
Mm.
really they roll their
Mhm.
eyes, but creatively, when you're doing something, you don't know what it is yet. And it's a conversation I'm having with my family a lot.
Okay.
Like they ask that question about
Mm.
monetization and stuff, and of course I have all these models
Mm.
and ideas, right? Whether it's like you're going down a subscription model, or whether you're going down a ads
Mm.
revenue model, and everything in between. But the thing is especially in this environment where everything belongs on that
Mm.
smartphone, everybody gets the opportunity right now to create their own
Mm.
niche, to really explore what it is that they're actually doing and
Mm.
producing. And I can tell you that when I launched the trailer of the Ezra Zaid
Mm.
project recently, 3 weeks
Mhm.
ago, the moment I launched the trailer, immediately, and with all the feedback I was getting, immediately I felt this huge sense of relief that actually episode 1 is changing a lot in my head.
Mm.
Episode 2, episode 4, oh, that's going to
Mm.
change now, because you don't really know what you have
Mm.
yet until that sort of bell curve settles
Mm.
down a little bit
Mm.
more. So, I mean, the first 10 episodes of what Effing Show was versus what it ended up
Mm.
being, like two completely different shows, I felt. And I think if your show doesn't go through a type of evolution, then you're probably just very content at what that is, and that that's what that
Mm.
is. I'm not part of that
Mm.
camp. I'm part of the, I don't know if this is working.
Mm.
Let's try
No,
and
I think it's
figure
funny
this out.
because I think uh, to the unfamiliar, I mean, there's no familiarity to this. It's all new, but to somebody who is not familiar to the idea of creating something new, right? Even when you say something to, even if you're starting a business, starting a company, or starting a show, they cannot compute how you make money. You don't make money.
Yeah,
Then how? That's it.
yeah.
When you say you don't make money or you hope to make money, and
No,
then they're like, what are you doing?
and then the worst part is they ask those questions, and then the next question goes, yeah, but Joe Rogan made like 100 million, right? So is that, are you gonna make 100 million?
Dude,
And
this is the
it's
saddest part, right? Like Joe Rogan is probably the best example of the structure of a podcast that I would like to do, in the sense that it's
sure,
open, right? There's no structure
yeah,
to
yeah.
it. There's no topics that I want to discuss per se. It's just a conversation. But I try my level best not to say it, because when you say it, suddenly the expectation is, oh,
For
how
sure,
are you monetizing this? Who's your sponsor? Da, da, da. And then they
yeah.
kind of lose the idea of, no, dude, there's an example of a format, but
Yeah, yeah. And but also the thing is, like, Joe was doing this when like those webcams were really ugly
dude, you
too.
could
So like
hardly
he's
see their face.
yeah, yeah. So Joe's been doing it a long
Yeah.
time, and I mean, a lot of people may agree and disagree with his content and the guests he gets on, but I think he's a dynamic interviewer, and I think the thing that he's brought to the table in so the thing that I've been sort of wrestling with, and it's a conversation that I've had with many people in the media industry because I worked there for quite a bit, and it's actually the the authority being
Mm.
democratized to the individual creator
Mm.
now, rather than it being held by these
Mm.
institutions of the gatekeepers of
Yeah.
what you and I used to grow up with in the 80s and 90s, and by and large maybe a little bit of 2000s. And so I think that opportunity, it's still the wild west right
Mm.
now about how it's going to turn out. My instinct is I'm a little bit optimistic because I think there's so many different subcultures and different pockets that people want to
Mm.
directly find resonance and relatability
Yeah.
to, and they will be willing to spend what they feel is necessary if they gain value out
Mm.
of that. So the notion of the how much you make money and the quantity and the numbers and the clicks, I with all due respect to all of those folks who know this a lot more than I do, I feel like I think it's the deep dive
Mm.
is the
Mm.
quality of what people are getting
Mm.
in this sort of, I guess, sharing
Yeah, I mean,
economy,
if
so to speak.
you uh right before you talk about your current show, right? I think that the what I can see from what you're mentioning right now, right, is the fact that, and this is a throwback to comment at first about Astro, you know, a lot of people would say Astro is expensive, right? Oh, Astro 150 for TV shows, blah blah, and all that. But now, if you kind of look at yourself as, oh, I have Spotify, I have Netflix, and I'm going to have Disney Plus, and now HBO Home, blah blah blah, and suddenly you see like, oh, Astro quite cheap, huh? Actually, Astro, $100, you
Right.
get a lot of content, huh? And now you're paying for like
Yeah,
almost
yeah, yeah.
individual channels,
Sure, sure.
and you realize that in this way, what you're saying about deep diving into a vertical is, if you are really invested in Disney and the content that they produce, and probably like stuff like
Yeah,
Mandalorian and all that, a lot of us are probably drawn to that. Then you choose to give your money here lah, instead of
yeah.
eh,
And you don't decide maybe to give Spotify that
yeah,
month just because maybe you're done listening to music for a bit. I mean, the options for the consumer is like, it's a lot right
yeah,
now, and it's too much. And I think the challenge for the likes of you and me is, how do you create a signal
yeah.
so that
You know,
people can resonate
I
with it?
actually feel that it hopefully, and I hope this is where it's heading, or not, it's just going to be too expensive for us. I hope it comes to a point where we pay for time, right? For example, if you're paying a dollar an hour, which is too
Yeah,
much, right? Okay, to say a dollar an hour, that means $24 a day potentially, right? So every time you watch something or listen to something, whether it's Spotify or Disney, you only pay for the time that you watch it, right? So suddenly
right.
I feel like, oh, I actually want to watch something on HBO, and while I'm watching HBO,
This is
I'm
it's like the it's like the prepaid
no,
model
but
or
actually
something.
that seems to be the most real. When I say realistic, in my head, realistic lah, because this is not a concept out
Yeah,
there in the world. Because
yeah,
or else it just becomes too expensive for a consumer, right?
yeah,
For as a
yeah.
consumer, everything is
But
too expensive. If you want everything, unless you're pirating and watching it
but
for
but
free.
here's the thing: you don't actually want everything. You want the access to
Mm,
everything, but you don't actually want
yeah,
everything.
I hear you.
I
I
mean,
hear you.
do you know
I
what I
hear you.
mean?
But the problem is, you go like, Disney, I don't want Disney. And he's like, oh, the Mandalorian is only on Disney. I was like, oh shit, I need Disney, right? And then it's like, and they're smart, right? They just need one anchor show on each of these services. Now
Sure,
Spotify has
sure.
got Joe Rogan, and
Yeah,
come December, he's not going to be on YouTube, right? So the question
yeah,
becomes, oh shit,
yeah,
I like Joe Rogan, I don't like ads, and I don't want to listen to the
yeah.
stupid ads on Spotify. I'm probably going
I
to give
know.
money to Spotify.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
it's a
And it's true. I mean, and what I've also come to notice about my consumption habits is that I think, like, it's interesting because I'm trying to cut down on my YouTube
mm,
watching,
mm,
because I think the number of
mm,
hours I'm clocking in there is fantastic,
for
right?
YouTube, yeah.
For a bit too much. And for Netflix, or at least listening to Spotify and stuff, I'm doing the odd binge every now and then. But it's really funny. I realize that, at least with the work that I'm trying to do now with this podcast and the Ezra Zaid project, it's I need to reduce the hours on like
Mm,
consumption, because it's distracting.
mm,
It's like feeding
mm,
into this, like, on most days I'd really love to throw away my
yeah,
phone. You know
I
what I
hear you,
mean?
man.
Because it's the most horrible device in the whole world, and it I mean, they made these things so that you get addicted to the
Mm.
scroll. You know what I mean?
Have
So,
you
and
watched The Social Dilemma? I mean,
yeah, yeah. I mean, I've read a book that sort of deals with that
yeah,
same thing, and I mean, I think maybe about a year and a bit ago, I sort of started
yeah.
rearranging the icons on my phone. I've sort of tried to have a plan as to, if I could do this a podcast without having
Social.
to do social
Mm.
media, I would do it in a heartbeat.
You feel like you want to,
I'm just,
right? I think even when I would for 2020, I think I've been on the only post I made on in 2020 this whole year is
yeah,
introducing my
yeah.
podcast on Facebook.
Yeah, same too, same too. And I mean, I try to mix it up and now, but it's tough because you know, I mean, apart from WhatsApp, I guess, where you're sort of in touch with your
Mm.
friends and family, like the rest of it,
But
I
even
don't.
then, right?
Yeah,
But even then, your phone, it creates a false sense of urgency that you don't
yeah,
really need to check your phone every minute. It's
absolutely.
if the important people in your life, like now that I'm married, I have a kid. When my wife and kid are at home, I kind of feel like I don't need to look at my phone, because the kind of like the important people are here, and
Yeah,
if anything else happens around the world, I can hear it an hour later, right?
yeah,
I don't have to
yeah,
have the
yeah,
phone
yeah,
with me.
yeah.
But I think more relevant to what you're saying just now about consuming too much on social, I think watching like the show, Social Dilemma, I think everybody should watch it because it's a very scary show. about how
Yeah.
addictive social media is. The one big
Yeah.
takeaway, which
Yeah.
I'm practicing actively now, is that
Yeah.
don't is choose your content. Don't let
Yeah.
people choose the content for you, right? So when you go to YouTube,
Yeah.
don't look at the recommended videos. Look for something that you want to watch and watch it.
Yes.
Turn off all the recommendation on Facebook. Turn off all the popular posts or recommended posts or that.
Yeah.
Start this idea of choosing your
Well,
content.
the you'll get to do that for about like a minute until an amazing recommendation kicks in with the
Have
algorithm.
you ever caught yourself halfway through one of these clickbait videos and you're like, oh, I'm so stupid, right?
Yeah.
And then you go like, why am I watching this? But
All
you
the,
still want to watch it, right?
all the time. I mean, I love going into like a JFK conspiracy rabbit hole every 6 months.
Oh man. No, okay,
So
sorry. I know we've been dragging on quite long, but I actually listened to the start of your current podcast, the Ezra Zaid project,
thanks, buddy.
and I didn't know what to expect at first. I don't know,
Ooh.
was I expecting a comeback or resurgence of the effing show? you know,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
and and my show is called I'm Assuming, so I will present to you my assumptions first, right? And you prove
Sure.
me
Go
wrong,
for
right?
it.
And
Yeah.
it feels like it's you mentioned storytelling. It feels like storytelling, but in a very structured, I would say very structured and loose way, in a way that you have a point that you want to deliver. And
Sure.
so the narrative is not so fluid. You kind of have an end goal that you want to get to, and you want to like present the story. So it feels like a summary of a book almost, right? You know, I
Okay.
mean, that's
Okay.
how I kind of feel it.
Yeah. Okay.
What? How do you see it, or what was your intention behind it?
Yeah. So let me see. So what when people ask me what is the podcast about, it's me trying to shine a light on unique stories and anecdotes of individuals who've overcome
Mm,
a sense of
mm,
adversity and they're very interested in discovery and basically a lot of these things are hidden in plain
mm,
sight, and so it's sort of the podcast is to sort of reveal those conversations a little bit. Um, and and to be honest, um, as I'm doing these podcasts and producing it, I know because I spend a lot of time
mm,
editing it
mm,
so that when you're eating this 20-minute podcast into your
mm,
ears, it's 20 minutes that I've worked really hard to
mm,
give you the thing that I can. And I wish I could do what you're
mm.
doing, which is, just having this free flow conversation and
Which
stuff.
no one listens to.
Um,
Nobody's got the
no,
time.
no, no. People listen to it. People listen to it. But here's the thing, right? It's not whether it's in of either format, right? It's actually for me, the way I'm doing it is basically it's the one that makes me feel most excited about how I'm
Mm,
presenting this thing
mm,
to you. A lot of people will find a lot of insights, a lot of interesting learnings and stuff. I do the ingredients that I have: good conversation, music, um, a certain level of production value. These are the things that
mm,
matters to me, and it doesn't matter so much that my voice is
mm.
there most of
It's
the
purely
time, half of
audio,
the
is it?
time. Yeah, purely
Okay.
audio, and I do have thoughts and ideas about for it to be
Mm,
video because it's going to be
yeah.
video and stuff. But I'm still trying to
The
determine
format.
what
Yeah.
the intent is,
Mm,
because if it's just me uploading it on YouTube,
mm,
I mean, great, but like that's not. I want to sort of have value to the visual format. So
mm.
yeah,
No, I understand. I think given your experience in media for all these years, I
yeah,
think you would have definitely a much higher standard of production value
yeah. Well,
than
but
I
but
would.
but here's the thing. But here's the thing. Like I mean, like I think it's that's like a safety blanket for
Mm,
me because um, when you're making anything, I think I noticed that even with
mm,
cooking during
mm,
MCO, I started cooking a lot
mm,
more. But even just the way I
mm,
prepped, everything's like, okay, it's all correct,
mm,
it's all correct. And I wasn't very loose
mm,
with like
mm.
the cooking, but now as I'm doing it more, I'm getting loose, and it's similar to the
Okay.
podcast. So what you're listening to, episode 1 with John Henry, is a very, in my opinion, sort of very well produced 20-minute audio experience. I'm hoping to make it more dynamic over the next few episodes where the sounds that you're hearing don't just belong to a living
Mm.
room, but belongs to the actual worlds of where these people reside. So
And
yeah,
in the sense of the type of guests that you have on, right?
yeah.
Uh, do you have, then your next 10 guests planned? Do you know who they are? Or
I do. Yeah. I mean, I have a wish list of people and stories, and some of them are more attainable than
okay,
others.
and sorry,
Um,
not to cut you off, but because again, I feel that it is almost the stories, it almost has a personal involvement to it. So does this mean that all these people are people that these stories are something that you personally have some kind of relation to, or is just
no,
stories you have heard?
no, no. It's. I mean, the first one is my housemaster, and it's not an episode about my relationship with him
When you
per
said
se.
you call him Hendo, right? Hendo or something. I was like, was
Yeah,
this an
yeah,
Indonesian guy or so
yeah, yeah,
referring
yeah,
to?
yeah, 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 yeah,
Okay.
yeah, yeah. And I think the key thing for me on this entire thing is basically um, because over the years on radio, I've interviewed a lot of interesting people, and I think sometimes I'm trying to get better as an interviewer
Okay.
as well, and it's really which is you listening as an interviewer is the hardest
Mm,
thing to do, and that's where if I do my job right, I get to extract very different textures and
mm,
tones and bites that really add to the overall thing. And it is primarily the people who I'm interested in are primarily people that I either look up to or are interested in, but there are also people who are like hidden in the
mm,
shadows a little bit as well, like the ones who don't get. I mean, there's going to be an episode about a particular refugee who really sort of had made his mark
mm,
here in
mm.
Malaysia, and he's been responsible for some of these great buildings in the
Wow.
city and
Wow.
stuff, and so he sort of explores his relationship with the world that he left and the world that this is, and actually the world that he was trying to head to as a result of his statelessness,
Mm,
I guess, so to
mm.
speak. So, yeah. So I mean, there's it's my, it's hard to say this with a straight face, but I I'm trying to I'm trying to tell myself that the show isn't about the
Mm,
who, it's about the why and the
mm.
how. So that's kind of like what the Ezra Zaid project is
If I were
about. Yeah.
to make an observation, and I'm not trying to blow smoke up your whatever, right?
Sure.
But
Sure.
the my intuition, the feeling that I got when I was listening to it at first, at least the intro, right? It took me to the intro for Dave Chappelle's special. And
Yeah.
I'm not talking about the actual special. Actually, just the intro when you have Morgan Freeman's voice and Dave Chappelle in black and white sitting on a
Right.
bench, where he's kind of
Yeah.
introducing, what he's thinking about, and then you hear music and you hear, you know,
Right.
that is the feel that I get. Not so much about Dave Chappelle doing
Ah.
the stand up. That's not what I'm talking about, right? I'm actually talking about the
Yeah.
intro of being immersive. And now when you're telling about trying to have, making people feel like they're in an atmosphere, that means, having that ambiance as well. That's the
Sure.
feel that I
Yeah. I
kind of get.
mean, yeah, yeah. And if you got that kind of
Yeah.
feel, then job done. So and here's the tough thing, because in this world where everything's very very
Mm,
visual,
mm,
this is not for
mm,
everyone, and I knew this going in. And in my ideal
mm.
circumstance, I'd love everybody who listens to the show, I want them to listen with their
Yeah.
headphones and not listen through their
Yeah.
phone and all that kind of stuff. But people consume things very very
Mm,
differently, and at the moment, you try your best to put your intent and your creativity into the thing. And so yeah, I some of these conversations obviously go on for a couple of hours and 3 hours and stuff, but I released sort of a first episode, but I also released like a bonus
mm,
episode that has more tactical and informative
mhm.
bites, and then the main episode is essentially the storytelling episode. So each week I release like a storytelling episode and
And
like
how
a
long does
bonus
it
episode.
take you realistically to edit something?
Too
Edit
long.
something like
Too long.
like what do you say? A few days?
No.
Well. Because when I started this,
I don't want to give an answer because I'm still embarrassed by the timeline. So
okay,
like,
okay,
but
let me
it's
ask you a
not.
different question, right?
Yeah,
Do you have people helping you through the edit
I have
process? Or?
I have a producer who I've worked with for a long time that listens to the rushes or listens to the raw tape, and then we have a conversation about what we think has come out of the tape, and then you identify good
Hmm.
tape, and then you have a discussion about what do you want to do with that good tape and how do you actually and there's a lot of fat around
Mm.
interviews, as you know, and what you want to do is you want to cook the
Mm.
good tape to the point where it really doesn't just resonate with yourself, it resonates with the intent of the interviewee, but also it can resonate with an audience that might not be so familiar with this world. So there's a lot of like decorating and setting up, and I mean it's the thing that I like to do, but it's not for
Mm.
everyone. And if people find the space to for about 20 odd minutes, 20-30 minutes to listen to it, yeah, I'm hoping that people will
You
resonate
know
with it.
the when I started the podcast, the first few episodes were purely audio. It
Yeah,
probably took me a day, half a day to kind of edit because I'm just editing out maybe awkward silences or the ums ahs where because
yeah, yeah, yeah.
audio ums and ahs on audio is very irritating lah. On video you're very forgiving
Very.
because you kind of see them and you kind of forgive it, but on audio it's and it doesn't take me so long, right? And then credit again to Byron, who's shout out again, is he was like, dude, you got to be on YouTube because he's like discovery algorithm. I'm people are not going to discover you on Spotify. Nobody's going
Yeah,
on Spotify looking for your show. Da, da, da. So he was like, you don't even have to do video. You can just like put your audio on like a screen grab and that's it. It's static, but the audio is there.
yeah,
But people
yeah,
need to
yeah.
discover blah blah, blah, right? And I was like, oh, actually, I have videos because I recorded. I have a webcam on and just record all the. He's like, dude, you gotta do it. You
Nice.
gotta do it. And so it was him who kind of like pushed me to do it. And again, falling back on
Yeah,
mentors and all that, a close one that I always talk to, I say I was doing this. He's like, yeah, I think you should do a video. Yeah,
no,
and
for
I was like,
sure.
why I don't. I've always felt that this idea of video and doing a show or whatnot is for people who are visually appealing, lah, right? And I always like, dude, this is
Yes.
not my game. I know that very early on. That's not my space, right?
Yeah, 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 yeah,
And
yeah,
so one of
yeah.
my mentors made this really funny observation. He's like, yeah, but like I like hanging out with you. I like talking to you, and there are other smart people that hang
Yes.
out with you, talking to you, and this your guests obviously enjoy having this conversation with you. So maybe it's not that you look nice or not, but maybe there's some appeal, lah.
There's
Yeah,
some
there's
sort
some
of yeah,
familiarity,
there's some
some
sort of
appeal.
appeal, some sort of intrinsic
Yeah,
value that
and
people
I never
can
thought about that,
identify
right? I
with.
thought like, oh, you need to be good looking, hot and
Yeah.
sexy
Mm,
to get
mm.
the clicks and the
And
likes.
no, but for those people who do well in that area, like more power to
Yeah.
them. Like I think it's great that they get to succeed very easily and very quickly. But at the same time, they have their own
Yeah.
challenges as
Mm.
well, which is that you have this huge quantifiable audience, but how much of them actually are sort of like passive
Mm.
observers, or whether they're sort of active
Mm.
participants to what you're doing or what you're selling or whatever, right? So I think that it cuts both ways in sort of very specific, and it really sort of goes
Yeah.
down to
And, and
how
of
you
course,
want
if
to
you
do
if
this.
you're a bit more pragmatic, the more pragmatic side of my investor, not my investor, my mentor was like, like, dude, just throw it everywhere, see what sticks, right?
Sure,
It's it.
yeah, and Bud, I know you touched base with me a number of months ago to be on your show, and it was really funny because the timing of it was such that I think it almost is like when you start telling yourself that okay, here's what you want to do, when you say out in the world and then you start doing it, it was by no surprise or coincidence that when you reached out to me, it's like, oh, that's freaky, and I'm gonna say yes to being on your show, but I can't do it now because I'm freaking out about my show. And I told you
Yeah,
like once my show comes out, then I'll be happy to
yeah.
do
No,
it. So and thanks for like just reaching out in the
no,
way
man.
you
I
did.
mean, and to be very fair, I, I don't actually know what you're going to say. I don't have an expectation of what I expect you to kind of come on and talk about. But I just think you're a very interesting person, lah. And in the sense that what minimum interactions we've had in the past, I felt was quite
Yeah,
interesting, and I felt that you needed a little bit of a runway. And thank you very much for coming on and doing this pod. I will definitely. I'll tell you now that I will bug you again once the
Yeah,
COVID has taken a break.
yeah,
And do
absolutely. And I'd be more than happy to go
yeah,
over to
yeah,
your place.
definitely,
And
to avoid this.
yeah, and it's really strange because I think on another version of the lockdown, I've probably made it over, and I think I'm just almost reacting to the
Yeah.
numbers and everything. So thanks for
No,
doing this
please.
virtually as well, man. And just we've known each other over the years when you were doing sort of your merchandising and stuff, and like I think it's great that we're also meeting at this sort of restart point for the both of
It
us,
feels
right?
that way.
It's it's hilarious because it's like I don't know, it's my third career or
Yeah.
whatever it is,
Actually, yes.
So
I mean,
yeah,
this is a beautiful way to end the pod. I do feel, as difficult as 2020 has been, for many people, I think, if the people you love are healthy, and
yeah,
if you're around, or I think you just have to count our graces and pick up, and
for
try
sure.
to kind of pivot or start something new, and don't just wawasan doplo doplo lah. It can still be a new beginning.
Yeah, yeah,
It
yeah,
might not be
yeah.
what the old man thought of.
And yeah, and like I think the opportunity, I'm like anybody else. Like when once January 1st, 2021
Mm.
kicks in, I'd like to reimagine that it's a clean slate. However, I don't know if COVID-19 subscribes to the Gregorian calendar, and it might be like this for a
Oh,
little bit. But I
mm,
think just trying to keep things one day at a time and keep
yeah.
things dynamic, and hopefully people stay
Yeah, man.
safe.
I mean, thanks so much for doing this. We will speak again,
Hey,
on the new normal,
absolutely.
after the new normal, after we recover from this new normal. Ezra, thanks again, man. All right.
That's good, buddy.